Stupid and rich, clever and poor, what can you say about a 25-year-old girl who died? You can say that she was beautiful and intelligent. She loved Mozart and Bach and the Beatles. And me. Once, when she told me that, I asked her who came first. She answered, smiling. Like in the ABC. I smiled too. But now I wonder. Was she talking about my first name? If she was, I came last, behind Mozart. Or did she mean my last name? If she did, I came between Bach and the Beatles. But I still didn't come first. That worries me terribly now. You see, I always had to be number one. Family pride, you see. In the autumn of my last year at Harvard University, I studied a lot in the Radcliffe Library. The library was quiet, nobody knew me there, and they had the books that I needed for my studies. The day before an examination, I went over to the library desk to ask for a book. 2 girls were working there. One was tall and sporty. The other was quiet and wore glasses. I chose her, and asked for my book. She gave me an unfriendly look. Don't you have a library at Harvard? She asked. Radcliffe let us use their library, I answered. Yes, Preppy, they do, but is it fair? Harvard has 5 million books. We have a few thousand. Oh dear, I thought. A clever Radcliffe girl. I can usually make girls like her feel very small. But I needed that damn book, so I had to be polite. Listen, I need that damn book. Don't speak like that to a lady, Preppy. Why are you so sure that I went to prep school? She took off her glasses. You look stupid and rich, she said. You're wrong, I said. I'm actually clever and poor. Oh no, Preppy, she said. I'm clever and poor. She was looking straight at me. All right, she had pretty brown eyes, and okay, perhaps I looked rich. But I don't let anyone call me stupid. What makes you so clever? I asked. I'm not going to go for coffee with you, she said. Listen, I'm not going to ask you. Is what makes you stupid. Let me explain why I took her for coffee. I got the book that I wanted, didn't I? And she couldn't leave the library until closing time. So I was able to study the book for a good long time. I got an A in my exam the next day. I gave the girls' legs an A too, when she came out from behind the library desk. We went to a coffee shop and I ordered coffee for both of us. I'm Jennifer Cavallari, she said. I'm American, but my family came from Italy. I'm studying music, my name is Oliver, I said. Is that your first or your last name? She asked. First. My other name is Barrett. Oh, she said. Like Elizabeth Barrett the writer? Yes, I said. No relation. I was pleased that she hadn't said Barrett like Barrett Hall. That Barrett is a relation of mine. Barrett Hall is a large, unlovely building at Harvard University. My great-grandfather gave it to Harvard long ago, and I am deeply ashamed of it. She was silent. She sat there, half smiling at me. I looked at her notebooks. 16th century music? I said. That sounds difficult. It's too difficult for you, Preppy, she said coldly. Why was I letting her talk to me like this? Didn't she read the university magazine? Didn't she know who I was? Hey, don't you know who I am? Yes, she answered. You're the man who owns Barrett Hall. She didn't know who I was. I don't own Barrett Hall, I argued. My great-grandfather gave it to Harvard, that's all. So that's why his not-so-great-grandson could get into Harvard so easily. I was angry now. Jenny, if I'm no good, why did you want me to invite you for coffee? She looked straight into my eyes and smiled. I like your body, she said. Every big winner has to be a good loser too. Every good Harvard man knows that. But it's better if you can win. And so, as I walked with Jenny to her dormitory, I made my winning move. Listen, Friday night is the Dartmouth hockey match, so I'd like you to come. These Radcliffe girls, they really care about sport. And why, she asked, should I come to a stupid ice hockey match? Because I'm playing, I answered. There was a moment's silence. I think I heard snow falling. For which team? She said. By the second quarter of the game on Friday night, we were winning 0-0. That is, Davy Johnson and I were getting ready to score a goal. The crowd were screaming for blood or a goal. I always feel that it's my job to give them both these things. I didn't look up at Jenny once, but I hoped she was watching me. I got the puck and started off across the ice. Davy Johnson was there on my left, but I didn't pass the puck to him. I wanted to score this goal myself. But before I could shoot, 2 big Dartmouth men were after me. In a moment, we were hitting the puck and each other as hard as we could. "You," said a voice suddenly. 2 minutes in the penalty box. I looked up. He was talking to me. "What did I do?" I asked. "Don't argue." He called to the official's desk. "Number 7, 2 minutes in the penalty box for fighting." Angrily I climbed into the penalty box. "Why are you sitting here when all your friends are playing?" The voice was Jenny's. I didn't answer. "Come on, Harvard, get that puck!" I shouted. "What did you do wrong?" Jenny asked. "I tried too hard." Out there on the ice, Harvard were playing with only 5 men. Is that something to be ashamed of? "Jenny, please." I'm thinking, what about those 2 Dartmouth men? When I get back onto the ice, I'll break them into little pieces. Do you always fight when you play hockey? I'll fight you, Jenny, if you don't keep quiet. I'm leaving. Goodbye. I looked round, but she had gone. Just then, the bell rang. My 2-minute penalty had finished. I jumped onto the ice again. "Good old Barrett," shouted the crowd. Jenny will hear them shouting for me, I thought. But where was she? Had she left? As I went for the puck, I looked up into the crowd. Jenny was standing there. I took the puck and went towards the goal line. 2 Dartmouth players were coming straight at me. "Go, Oliver, go! Knock their heads off," that was Jenny's voice above the crowd. It was crazily, beautifully violent. I pushed past one Dartmouth man. I knocked hard into the other. Then I passed the puck to Davy Johnson, and he banged it into the Dartmouth goal. The crowd went wild. In a moment we were all shouting and kissing and banging each other on the back. The crowd were screaming with excitement. After that, we murdered Dartmouth 7-0. After the match, I lay in the hot bath and thought with pride about the game. I'd scored 1 goal, and helped to score another. Now the water felt wonderful on my tired body. Suddenly I remembered Jenny. Was she still waiting outside? I hoped so. I jumped out of that bath and dressed as fast as I could. Outside, the cold winter air hit me. I looked round for Jenny. Had she walked back to her dormitory alone? Suddenly I saw her. "Hey, Preppy, it's cold out here." I was really pleased to see her, and gave her a quick kiss. "Did I say you could kiss me?" she said. "Sorry." I was just excited. I wasn't. It was dark and quiet out there in the cold. I kissed her again, more slowly. When we reached her dormitory, I did not kiss her goodnight. "Listen, Jenny, perhaps I won't telephone you for a few months." She was silent for a moment. "Why?" she asked at last. "But perhaps I'll telephone you as soon as I get back to my dorm." I turned and began to walk away. "Damn Preppy," I heard her say. I turned again. From 20 feet away I scored another goal. "You see, Jenny, that's the kind of thing you say. And when other people do it to you, you don't like it." I wished I could see the look on her face. But I couldn't look back. My pride wouldn't let me. When I returned to my dorm, Ray Stratton was there. He and I slept in the same room. Ray was playing cards with some of his football-playing friends. "Hello, Ollie," said Ray. "How many goals did you score?" "I scored 1, and I made 1, I answered. "With Cavalieri? That's none of your business." I replied quickly. "Who's Cavalieri?" asked one of the footballers. "Jenny Cavalieri. Studies music. Plays the piano with the music group." "What does she play with, Barrett?" Everyone laughed. "Get lost," I said as I entered my room. There I took off my shoes, lay back on my bed and telephoned Jenny's dormitory. "Hey, Jen," I said softly. "Yes, I think I'm in love with you." She was silent for a few moments. Then she answered, very softly, "Oliver, you're crazy." I wasn't unhappy. Or surprised. A few weeks later, I was hurt in the hockey match at Cornell University. My face was badly cut, and the officials gave me the penalty for starting the fight. 5 minutes. I sat quietly in the penalty box while the team manager cleaned the blood off my face. I was ashamed to look out onto the ice. But the shouts of the crowd told me everything. Cornell scored a goal. The score was 3-3 now. Damn, I thought. We're going to lose this match, because of me. Across the ice, among the crowd, I saw him. My father. Old stony face. He was looking straight at me. If the meeting finishes in time, I'll come to Cornell and watch you play, he had told me on the phone. And there he was, Oliver Barrett III. What was he thinking about? Who could say? Why was he here? Family pride, perhaps? Look at me. I am a very busy, important man, but I have come all the way to Cornell, just to watch my son play in a hockey match. We lost 6-3. After the match, the doctor put 12 stitches in my face. When I got to the changing room, it was empty. They don't want to talk to me, I thought. I lost that match. I felt very ashamed as I walked out into the winter night. Come and have dinner, son, said a voice. It was old stony face. At dinner, we had one of our non-conversations. We spoke to each other, but didn't actually say anything. These non-conversations always started with "How have you been, son?" and ended with "Is there anything I can do for you? How have you been, son?" My father began, "Fine, sir. Does your face hurt?" "No, sir." It hurt terribly. Next, old stony face talked about playing the game. "All right, son, you lost the match. How clever of you to notice, father. But after all, in sport, the important thing is the playing, not the winning." Wonderful, I thought. Father was chosen for the Olympic Games. And now he says winning is not important. I just looked down at my plate and said yes, sir, at the right times. Our non-conversation continued. After playing the game, he discussed my plans. "Tell me, Oliver, has the law school accepted you yet?" "Not yet, sir. Would you like me to telephone them?" "No," I said at once. "I want to get a letter like other people, sir." "Please." "Yes, of course." "Fine. After all, they're sure to accept you." "Why?" I thought. Because I'm clever and successful? Or because I'm the son of Oliver Barrett III? The meal was as uninteresting as the conversation. At last, my father spoke again. "There's always the Peace Corps," he said suddenly. "I think the Peace Corps is a fine thing, don't you?" "Oh, yes, sir," I said politely. I knew nothing about the Peace Corps. "What do your friends at Harvard think about the Peace Corps?" he asked. "Do they feel that the Peace Corps is important in our world today?" "Yes, sir," I said politely, just to please him. After dinner, I walked with him to his car. "Is there anything I can do for you, son?" he asked. "No, thank you, sir." "Good night, sir." Our non-conversation was finished. He drove away. Yes, of course there are planes, but Oliver Barrett III chose to drive. My father likes to drive fast. And at that time of night, in an Aston Martin DBS, you can go very fast indeed. I went to telephone Jenny. That was the only good part of the evening. I told her about the fight. She enjoyed that. Her musical friends never got into fights. "I hope you hit the man who hit you," she said. "Oh yes, good. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to watch you." "Perhaps you'll hit somebody in the Yale match," I smiled. Jenny really made me feel better. Back at Harvard the next day, I called at her dorm. Jenny was talking to someone on the telephone in the hall. "Yes. Of course." "Oh yes, Phil. I love you too. Love and kisses. Goodbye." Who was she talking to? I had only been away 48 hours, and she had found a new boyfriend. Jenny did not seem ashamed. She kissed me lightly on the unhurt side of my face. "Hey, you look terrible. 12 stitches, Jen. Does the other man look worse than you?" "Much worse. I always make the other man look worse." We walked to my MG sports car. "Who's Phil?" I asked as carelessly as I could. "My father." I could not believe that. "You call your father Phil? That's his name." "What do you call your father, sir? He must be really proud of you. You're a big hockey star and you're always successful in your exams." "You don't know anything, Jenny. He was good at exams and sport, too. He was in the Olympic Games. My God. Did he win?" "No. Actually, old stony face was 6th, which makes me feel a little better." Jenny was silent for a moment. Why do you hate him so much? She asked at last. I'm Oliver Barrett IV, I answered. All Barretts have to be successful. And that means I have to be good at everything, all the time. I hate it. Oh, I'm sure you do, laughed Jenny. You hate doing well in your exams. You hate being a hockey star, but he expects it, I said. If I'm successful, he isn't excited or surprised. He was a big success, and he expects me to be the same. I told her about our meal and our non-conversation after the Cornell match, but she didn't understand at all. You say your father is a busy man, she said. But he found time to go all the way to Cornell to watch you play. How can you say these terrible things about him, when he drove all that way, just to watch your hockey match? He loves you, Oliver, can't you understand? Forget it, Jenny, I said. She was silent for a moment. I'm pleased you have problems with your father, she said at last. That means you aren't perfect. Oh, you mean you are perfect? Of course not, Preppy. That's why I go out with you. Jenny loved to have the last word. For 3 years after our marriage, Jenny and I lived on a shoestring budget, carefully counting every dollar. Summers were spent working at a beach club near Dennisport. Jenny taught sailing to eager children while I took odd jobs to earn enough to get us through the rest of the year. Our days were long and the work exhausting, but we were happy, embracing each challenge as a stepping stone toward building the life we envisioned together. Jenny's optimism never wavered. She had this way of making even the most mundane days feel like an adventure, turning hard times into stories we'd laugh about later. She often said, "One day, we'll look back and miss these days." In the fall and winter, we moved to a small, top-floor flat in an old townhouse close to the university. It was one of those places with creaky floors, drafty windows, and the occasional leaky ceiling, what Jenny liked to call character. We called it home. Our first night there, we ate takeout on the living room floor because we didn't have any furniture yet. It was a little tradition we created. Every time we moved to a new place, we'd have a floor picnic and toast to new beginnings. These simple moments, in hindsight, were what defined our journey. Money was always tight, and our landlady often gave us suspicious glances, likely assuming we had financial backing from my family. After all, the Barrett name carried weight in certain circles. But in our humble neighborhood, it was just a name on a mailbox. My law school studies were demanding, and Jenny's teaching job didn't pay much. But we learned to find joy in what we had rather than what we lacked. Jenny's laughter was infectious. She had this gift of turning mundane moments into memories, creating little inside jokes that only we understood. The topic of my family came up often. Jenny, with her open heart, wanted me to reconcile with my father. She believed that holding on to grudges weighed down the spirit. But my pride, a Barrett trait that ran deep, made reconciliation feel like an insurmountable challenge. Despite my reservations, Jenny's gentle persistence planted seeds of possibility. Even as the divide between my father and me widened, graduation marked a pivotal moment in our lives. Years of relentless effort culminated in that day, and when the final rankings were posted, I found myself third in the class. It opened doors I hadn't anticipated. Law firms began courting me with offers that promised prestige and security. A far cry from our life of counting coins. The most enticing offer came from Jonas and Marsh, a reputable firm in New York. The decision to accept felt less like a choice and more like destiny. Moving to New York felt like the beginning of a new chapter. We rented a cozy flat not far from the office, nestled in a neighborhood brimming with boutique shops and hidden gems. It was a stark contrast to our previous homes, and I encouraged Jenny to indulge in little luxuries. "You kept us afloat," I reminded her. "Now it's my turn to take care of you." I wanted to give her the world, to repay her for the sacrifices she made, but Jenny remained grounded. Material comforts never swayed her. New York's social scene introduced us to my Harvard connections, and I tried to integrate Jenny into these circles. But the gatherings at the Harvard Club felt foreign to her, a world of old friends parading their new fortunes. Jenny avoided these events, declining invitations with grace. She didn't want to become someone she wasn't, and I respected her for that. We had always dreamed of starting a family, and we even picked out a name, Bozo, inspired by a legendary sports figure we both admired. But what began as a joyful anticipation turned into a quiet struggle. Trying for a child became an unspoken source of pain, a silent battle that neither of us knew how to face. We tiptoed around the topic, each of us carrying fears we couldn't voice. A routine doctor's visit shattered our illusion of control. The diagnosis, Jenny had a severe blood disorder, came like a thunderclap. The doctor's words were clinical, detached, but each syllable cut deep, tearing at the fragile life we had built. Jenny, who had been the embodiment of vitality and resilience, was suddenly so vulnerable. Dr. Shepard advised me to maintain normalcy, to act like everything was fine. But how could I pretend when the person I loved most was slipping away? Each morning I woke up and saw her beside me. I was grateful. I learned to treasure every moment, even as my anger toward fate slowly turned into reluctant acceptance. One day, an opportunity for a major project in Chicago arose, but I turned it down without a second thought. Work was no longer my priority, Jenny was. I began to see what truly mattered, and it wasn't ambition or career success. It was the quiet moments, the shared laughter, and the time spent with those you love. We talked openly about our fears, our dreams, and our regrets. In doing so, we grew even closer. Jenny's illness progressed, and maintaining appearances became increasingly difficult. One quiet evening, after dinner, she confessed that she knew the full extent of her condition. She had gone back to Dr. Shepard on her own, seeking answers to the questions that haunted her. The charade ended that night, and we faced our harsh reality head-on. True to her nature, Jenny worried about others more than herself. She asked me to take care of her father, Phil, after she was gone. It was a selfless request, but one that spoke volumes about her character. Jenny was always thinking ahead, considering the impact of her absence on those she loved. The day Jenny asked to go to the hospital was one of the hardest. On the way, a taxi driver innocently assumed she was pregnant, offering advice about staying healthy for the baby. It was a simple mistake, but it struck a raw nerve. I had to hold back tears while Jenny, with her characteristic grace, smiled and thanked the driver. At the hospital, it became clear that we were nearing the end. The staff recognized us, their somber demeanor underscoring the inevitability of it all. Money, which once preoccupied us, now felt meaningless in the face of what we were losing. The days at the hospital were long and heavy. Phil stayed with us in New York, occupying his time by cleaning the flat and trying to keep himself busy. It was his way of coping, of staying close to Jenny even as she slipped away. One night, as Jenny's strength waned, she asked me to hold her. Her voice was faint, but her words were clear. I did my best to stay strong, but inside I was breaking. In her final moments, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you." It was the last thing she ever said. After Jenny's passing, I found Phil standing quietly in the hallway, his shoulders heavy with grief. He had kept his promise to stay strong, even as his world fell apart. Outside, as I tried to gather myself, I saw my father waiting in the entrance hall. His presence stirred a mix of emotions, anger, grief, and a longing for reconciliation I hadn't felt before. Returning to Boston felt surreal, like stepping into a life that no longer fit. I approached my father for financial help, not revealing the full truth of what had happened. He handed over a check, and though our conversation was brief, I sensed a shift, a mutual recognition of shared loss and a tentative desire to mend what had been broken. Life moved forward, but it was a hazy blur of routines and obligations. I returned to work at Jonas and Marsh, seeking solace in the familiar tasks. Yet, every day felt like going through the motions. While packing up our flat, I stumbled upon the old plane tickets to Paris, a dream deferred, a promise unfulfilled. It was a bittersweet reminder of the life we had imagined together. In that moment, I felt Jenny's presence, a gentle nudge urging me to move forward. Her memory became my guide, pushing me to rebuild my life piece by piece, day by day.